You've spent months researching, tracking, hunting, and seeking the dragon Pyrus. You finally have tracked it back to its lair.
You have killed my father. Prepare to die.
Well, Ted, that was rather anticlimactic.
My vengeance is empty.
Hey folks, Nerdarchy Dave from Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds, and today I'm hanging out with
Nerdarchy Ted.
This is a place where you can find news, views, and homebrews for Dungeons & Dragons as well as other RPGs.
Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and attune to that notification bell.
We're going to talk about fighting large, epic, big monsters in Dungeons & Dragons. We're kind of like, is Wizards of the Coast doing it right? Does the Monster Manual get it right? We've had some encounters that have kind of been a little lackluster. Like the skit we just did. They had that in common. But no, like, we've done a tarrasque fight, and it was very anticlimactic and kind of boring on the channel. And it was even worse so because, like, the players all knew that they were fighting this monster, and they kind of built their characters to fight it. And you can really take out a monster like that fairly easy if you don't have a very creative DM, if he's just reading the stat block in the Monster Manual.
You're 100% correct there, Dave. The stat blocks as they're presented, they don't in any way, shape, or form take into account the scale, the size, these titanic creatures. When you start getting into huge and gargantuan monsters, like, I am sorry, they are so massive that the amount of attacks that they get, the effects of their attacks, it just doesn't stack up to what creatures of that size and capability really have.
Now, when you look at the Monster Manual, or even, all the different monster books that are out there, we have to ask ourselves the question, are huge and gargantuan monsters really scary? The short answer is no. You can go from CR2, Awakened Tree, all the way up to CR30 when you're talking about Tiamat and the tarrasque themselves. And, they can just be so lackluster for the epic monsters that they are. And even if it's not Tiamat or the tarrasque itself, just think about it. A huge kaiju-sized creature, bearing down on you, either from the sky or coming up from the ocean, or, trampling across a city, right? And you know what happens when a creature like that tramples across a city?
They're going to destroy whatever's in their path. I mean, we've watched, I'm certain you guys out there have seen Godzilla or these other kaiju movies. You've got Pacific Rim, if you want to speak to the current generation of movies that are out there. And when these things attack, they level everything in their wake. Buildings crumple, people flee in terror because you're the size of this thing's foot.
But that being said, there is a lot of room to use these monsters. It requires a little more imagination from the GM, but you can definitely bring it and kind of bring that awe and terror factor. It's just going to require a little bit more work.
And you know what else it's going to need? It's going to need more dice.
Big monsters mean big dice rolls. But before we get into that, we want to thank our sponsor because, what is Dungeons & Dragons without dice? A lot of dice, such as dice from Easy Roller Dice, whether it's your first set of dice or your 1 millionth set of dice. Grab some Easy Roller Dice. Down in the description, you can find a one-time coupon code as well as a link to Easy Roller Dice /Nerdarchy. Go get some Easy Roller Dice. What are some things we can do with big monsters? What are some ideas? Like, for instance, their presence alone just causes hazards.
Yeah, and you could literally have, if the monster is walking around, it's going to create difficult terrain for, anyone in that vicinity. If you got a creature that's flying, I'm sorry. You've been around a helicopter before, maybe yes, maybe no, but everybody who has their hairs flying, they're covering their eyes because the wind is kicking up so much. Well, I'm sorry, if a creature is sitting there hovering over top of you, those wing flaps are buffeting. Maybe you're blind. Whether you close your eyes or maybe you have to make a strength save or a dex save to not get knocked off of your feet. If this thing is that much bigger than you and it's got wingspan and reach to get it up in the air, you just don't have the strength to stay up.
Yeah, I feel like even if they're low DCs and easy rolls to make, you should definitely be adding some of these, whether it's to avert your eyes or having to actually make a strength check to move forward or not get pushed back, especially if you're a small creature. And granted, you know what, your warrior and your warrior type characters are probably not going to have a problem with this, but it might be an issue for the rogue or the wizard in the party. So it's just an extra dynamic to add to it. And also, is it going to cause obscurement in the area around you? Like you used the helicopter example, which is a great one. And also, there's a psychological effect that happens too. Like you always see people ducking, when they're running to or from the helicopter, even if they don't actually have to. They're very conscious of these whirling blades of death over their head, and they may have feet of clearance, but they still duck. Well, imagine some kind of dragon, with claws and a tail, and even the wings themselves in that maw. I just gotta believe that has a psychological effect on somebody.
Much more so than just that sheer, do you make a wisdom save when, it uses its frightful presence. Like there is, you should have a sense of self-preservation when you're dealing with this kind of stuff. So if you want to have these more realistic effects, these are just, some ways that you can get into it.
Yeah, think about movies like Clash of the Titans, not the more recent one, but the original one, right? And they have to make the sacrifice in order to have the kraken not released and wreak havoc upon the city. My impression from that movie wasn't so much that this big monster was going to come and destroy things physically, but it was going to create like a tidal wave and just wipe out the city. And when you have enormous creatures like that, just their presence alone has these environmental effects. A kraken or a dragon turtle, that's the monster I want. A dragon turtle just, surging towards the ship itself is going to create this enormous wave that's going to go out in front of them. They have the ability to just slap themselves down on the prow of a ship and start swamping it. Now, not only are the players having to worry about, this terrible monster that's going to try and eat them or maybe scald them to death with their breath weapon, but the ship is pitching violently. They may even be sliding towards the monster. The monster may be pulling the ship down. The monster's ability to wreck the ship itself is tremendous.
When you get into land-based creatures, I said, there could be difficult terrain. Well, what if it's just its sheer path of walking makes different levels of terrain, its footprint goes in so much that you are literally now that much lower down and unable to reach, anything of vital on the target.
Yeah, I would even hazard to say, maybe pun intended. Think about a quadrupedal creature moving, that it's, 4 foot plants, maybe a tail slapping against the ground behind it, churning up the earth. I feel like it would be realistic to take some kind of marker and just mark the path of the beast. And any place that it's been is now difficult terrain for any creature of size, large or smaller. And it just adds another dynamic to the battle.
If you want to add different things that, come from real life, anyone who's a dog owner, knows that when a dog is excited, it's wagging its tail, and you've been whacked in the face or the leg or, somewhere, and it hurts just by it moving. Your dad raised lizards, and I've got experience raising an iguana. Their tails are long and whippy, and when they move, that thing is skittering around. So even without it being an actual attack, it's definitely causing effect on the terrain and the things around it.
Yeah, you bring up dogs. Any dog lover out there that's had big dogs knows a dog's tail can be a coffee table clearer, right? Without it really trying. So what happens if you take a tarrasque, a dragon, or some other enormous creature and let it loose in a city? It's just walking down the street and buildings next to it are crumbling or being knocked over. That's going to create difficult terrain. It's going to create raining debris that people are going to have to worry about. Are your heroes going to be worried about trying to clear out civilians and townsfolk and save them? Or, they're just worrying about themselves. But even just worrying about themselves, what happens if these creatures intentionally knock buildings over in their direction? How do you even avoid that? I mean, the rogue has evasion and uncanny dodge. It'll help somewhat. But even then, how do you dodge a whole building? To me, the only thing I can think of as the building is knocked over towards them and they can't get away, they somehow jump on top of it and are running up it as it's going down. Very action movie style-esque. But what is everyone else going to do? Get buried? Like you took X amount of damage and now you're buried under a pile of rubble. What are you going to do?
I'm going to spend the next 7 turns digging myself out.
Yeah. And by that time, the thing is left and gone to the next town to knock over some more buildings. So these should be really cinematic and exciting scenes that you implement. But, the monsters as they are in the Monster Manual just aren't. Even if they have legendary actions, a lot of times I don't feel like they really, truly encompass that.
So there's lots of things that are not taking into an account. When these creatures are that much bigger, I mean, even large-sized monsters that are 10 to 12 feet tall. Like, if you've got kids, you know what it's like when your kids are climbing on you. Well, when the scale is that much bigger, what do you do when the PCs start climbing them? How do you handle that?
Well, yeah, that's a good point. Do you give them advantage on their attacks? Do you allow them to do extra damage? How's the monster going to respond, right? It's, the PCs, I would give them different advantages for doing that, whether it's advantage on their attack rolls or extra damage, however they wanted to do it, and how they determine, how they climb would determine how it would affect it as well. Also, like, if they wanted to be like, oh, the rogue grabs his daggers and is using it to scale the monster. All right, well, you know what? I'm not going to do extra damage or make it easier to hit, but, take advantage on your athletics check or something, to kind of speak to what they're doing. But that does, like I said, Ted, what happens? What's the monster's response? What are they going to do? What do you see whenever a little guy jumps on like the back of a big guy? What do they do every time? Yeah. No, that's not what they do. They usually throw themselves on the ground, right? But what happens when a dragon does that to you?
Oh, man.
There's going to be some saving throws needed. You're going to have to make athletics checks or animal handling checks to stay on top of them. These could be exciting parts of the battle as well.
When that kind of stuff happens, like you have to get into.
We need a physics major. We need to figure out, right, if a dragon like shimmy shakes and you fail your athletics check, how far is that player going to be thrown from the dragon? How much falling damage are they going to take?
Falling damage is going to be wherever it is, but the dragon landing on you, like that's going to have to that's going to take some work to try and figure out.
Yeah, you look at the colossal red dragon model and you look at the minis that are the player characters, and like I look at that and go, this is not even a fight. Like, it literally could just sit on you. What is their sword going to do to it? It's like trying to kill me with a push pin. That's a long sword to it. What can you actually reach? You have to hope to hit maybe an artery, and like, are they close enough to the surface to even really cut a major artery?
Given that, when the dragon is down, like, okay, you're attacking its lower extremities. You're not even really getting to the elbow unless you're using missile weapons to try and hit its face or its torso. Can you really kill something by stabbing its foot? Like, is that possible?
Like I said, if they bleed out from a major artery. But that does bring us to another thing that players can do when they're facing these massive creatures and buying into the battle, right? And not just being like, oh, the game mechanics, but buying into it and go, oh, what am I going to do? They're going to want to try and get to high ground. Maybe they're going to want to climb one of those buildings and get on top of the building so they can get at the creature's face. Or maybe they're going to cast spells to fly in order to, get up there and attack vital areas of the monster. Maybe you're a druid, you're going to wild shape into a creature that can fly, a giant eagle, so you can try and peck at its eyes or something.
Maybe you're going to use siege weapons, something that's like, oh, I've got number one size, so that you're attacking something that's going to do significant enough damage relative to the size of the creature, and at range, so that you've got the ability to, like, I'm not right on top of this thing, so I've got the ability to aim, to plan. I can take a deep breath. Maybe I'm out of its frightful presence area, to not have to worry about that problem as well.
Yeah, I feel like with a ballista, at least then you can feel like, oh, this could actually get to its heart, go through its skull or something. But you look at an arrow and you're like, well, what's that going to do? Even if you like shot it in the brain with an arrow that's like so small, at that point, does it even really, would it really be the same as getting hit? Because it's not like it's got the velocity of a bullet, or, the impact that a bullet has.
Right.
So, I don't know. The question is, guys, what are you doing in your games? How do you make large monsters exciting? Do your players buy in, or is it, fighting a dragon is just like fighting a goblin to them? Let us know. We got a place where we can discuss it. That's down in the comments below. While you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
You can check out Easy Roller Dice and check out that awesome Gleam contest that's going on below.
So until next time, stay nerdy.